metal sphere falls from the sky. A sliced lemon becomes whole again. A woman freezes in the middle of the street like a character in a broken game. And at night, cameras capture something that, in theory, should not be there at all. Today, we have gathered footage that looks like editing, but makes you watch it again and again. It will be inexplicable, strange, at times criminal, eerie, and insanely interesting. These are the most intriguing moments ever caught on camera. I wish everyone pleasant viewing. One of the most unpleasant types of paranormal videos is footage with dolls. In the video by TikTok user LukeU01, the camera was not set up for mysticism, but to see what the cat was doing while the owner was not at home. But something far stranger was captured in the frame. A doll sitting in the room suddenly began moving its hand. It was not a light tremble and not a barely noticeable shift. The hand seemed to wave. The cat noticed the movement, came closer, and began examining the doll. After a few seconds, it fell. Of course, one can assume that there was a mechanism inside, that it was touched by a draft, or that a hidden string worked, but the cat's reaction adds an unpleasant plausibility to the scene. Animals often notice what humans ignore, and if even the cat decided to check what was happening with the doll, then something unusual really did happen in that room. Grave robbing for morons is one of the strangest VHS recordings that circulated on the internet and in bootleg collections since the 1990s. It is believed to have been filmed around 1987. In the grainy recording, a young man holds a skull and bones, talks about grave robbing, selling remains, and mentions people by the names Anthony and Poochie. No one knows exactly who he is, where the video was filmed, or whether it was all real. Police records directly connected to the tape were never found. Because of that, the theories split. Some consider it a homemade horror short film, others see it as a shock video created for attention, and still others allow the possibility that we are looking at real grave robbers. From January 8th to February 11th, 2024, the Schmidt Ocean Institute research vessel Falcor 2 studied seamounts off the coast of Chile. The team, led by Dr. Javier Salinas, explored the Nazca and Salas y Gomez Ridge, a chain of more than 200 seamounts stretching from Chile toward Easter Island. The results exceeded expectations. Scientists documented more than 100 potentially new species: deep-sea corals, sponges, lobsters, amphipods, sea urchins the size of cacti, and creatures that do not even have names yet. Using an underwater robot, they studied 10 mountains and discovered that each had a unique ecosystem. More than 52,000 square kilometers of seafloor were also mapped, and 4 previously unknown seamounts were discovered. The tallest was named Solido, lonely. During the next expedition, another 160 species previously unknown in the region were found, and at least 50 of them may be completely new to science. And this is perhaps the best ending. The most incredible world is hidden not in fiction, but in the depths of the ocean. Some videos begin as if they were filmed specifically for a science fiction movie, but in this case, everything looked too spontaneous. A man in the United States was hosting a nighttime stream when he noticed an unknown object sharply falling down from the sky. He went to check the crash site and saw a smooth metal sphere on the ground. It lay motionless, but a quiet hum came from it, similar to the sound of a small drone or a working mechanism. The strangest part began when the man carefully touched the object. One side of the sphere was icy, while the other was noticeably warm. Then he began moving it with a stick and noticed a strange symbol on the surface. Online viewers immediately remembered the so-called spheres of God, mysterious metal balls that were supposedly found in different countries. Some consider them fragments of space debris, some think they are part of secret technology, and the boldest theories speak of extraterrestrial origin. In 2012, YouTube user Chad Logan published a strange 5-minute recording, supposedly filmed on an old 8mm camera. Most of the video looks almost harmless until the camera ends up in the forest. In the recording, an elderly woman walks between the trees and a cloth bag lies on the ground. The person with the camera comes closer, opens it, and inside is a human head. The origin of the film is unknown. Chad's channel had another video called Bitterroot Photos, where he showed old black and white photographs found together with the real. According to him, he bought furniture and various items from someone on Craigslist, and among the objects was a wooden box. Inside were photographs labeled Bitterroot and a metal can with film. No one ever learned who filmed those frames, why they were made, or whether they were staged. It is exactly the uncertainty that turns this story into an internet legend. Number 9. At around 2 o'clock in the morning, a woman entered a small shop in Yemen. The seller was sitting behind the counter and immediately noticed that something was wrong with the visitor. She was very pale, moved strangely, and behaved too confidently for a random nighttime guest. The woman asked why he was listening to the Quran, then came very close, so close that the man leaned back. After that, she said, "Do not be afraid, I am an angel." Then she was about to leave, but suddenly stopped and asked, "Who died?" The seller answered that no one had, but she repeated the question again. Before leaving, the woman asked for money. Later, the man said that one detail frightened him most of all. When he looked down, her feet seemed to him to look like hooves. In Paris, people stopped right in the street looking up at the sky. A triangular object with lights at the corners and a blinking point in the center hovered above the city. It moved slowly and looked too unusual for an ordinary airplane, but this is not the only similar recording from Paris. There is another, more famous video supposedly filmed in July 2008 by an anonymous military man. In it, a triangular object is visible as if through an infrared camera. The background moves, industrial objects can be seen in the distance, and the craft itself seems to release steam. Skeptics call the recording high-quality graphics. Others are sure that we are looking at a possible TR-3B, the legendary secret triangular aircraft that has been rumored about since the 1990s. In the restaurant where TikToker Jade Gonzalez worked, an ordinary shift suddenly turned into one of the strangest surveillance camera recordings. In the video, the girl cuts a lemon. First, she divides it in half, then she cuts one of the halves again. Nothing unusual, exactly until the moment when she is about to put the piece into a bag. The girl suddenly freezes, looks at the lemon, and does not understand what is happening. According to her, the fruit looked as if it had not been cut at all. The recording really shows that the lemon pieces separate, but a second later it seems to become whole again. Some viewers suggested that the knife simply did not go all the way through, but others noticed a strange yellowish flash at the exact moment when the lemon assembled itself back together. Of course, it may be a play of light, a camera error, or an optical illusion, but the scene itself looks so absurd and at the same time convincing that it makes you watch it again and again. In one video, a group of people is driving through a parking lot when a dark figure suddenly runs out in front of the car. The car stops abruptly and two passengers get out to check whether they hit an animal or a person. This is an important detail. The figure was seen not only by the camera but also by the people in the car. They search around, inspect the place, but find nothing. No injured animal, no person, no traces of a collision. Whatever appeared in front of the car disappeared as quickly as it had emerged. Skeptically, this can be explained as a shadow, reflection, recording defect, or small animal that managed to run away, but the reaction of the people in the frame adds weight to the story. They really thought they had crashed into something. Pilots see the sky more often than most people on the planet, so their reports about strange lights sound especially interesting. In a video published by user main_development42, a pilot says that he was flying at an altitude of about 36,000 feet west of Denver and noticed several lights that appeared, disappeared, and changed position. They did not look like stars. When watching the recording, it is visible that some of the points vanish and then appear in other places. The pilot claimed that he asked air traffic controllers, but they also could not explain the phenomenon. According to him, this was already his second encounter with similar lights, and he was sure they were not related to either civilian or military aviation. Of course, there are satellites, reflections, atmospheric phenomena, and other objects in the sky, but when a professional cannot identify what he sees, the story immediately becomes much more serious. One of the most disturbing stories in this collection is connected with an old film supposedly found in 1973 in the attic of a house in Iowa. In the recording, an unknown man behaves as if he is in a state of complete loss of control. His movements are sharp, unpredictable, and the sounds he makes were described by viewers as inhuman. At one point, it seems as if something is moving under his skin from the inside. To this day, no one can confidently say what it was: a real recording, a staged performance, experimental horror, or a very convincing imitation. In a video from the account Noel the Lamb, 4 horses stand in a paddock completely motionless, and if not for the rain and the barely noticeable movement of their tails, the recording could be mistaken for a photograph. The owner, who spends time with these animals every day, called what was happening a glitch in the matrix. Of course, horses can enter states of rest, alertness, or reaction to danger. They can freeze if they hear a predator, sense a change in the weather, or see something a person does not notice. In the comments, many people wrote exactly that. Animals are often the first to react to danger. That is why the video is frightening, not because the horses are simply standing. What frightens is how synchronously and unnaturally they froze, as if all 4 heard the same signal at the same time. The only question is where it came from. In a Mexican piñata shop, a surveillance camera captured a moment that looks like a scene from a horror movie. A worker is calmly doing her tasks when suddenly something grabs her leg and forcefully pulls her into the next room. There is no one in the frame. No person, no rope, no object she could have caught on is visible. The shop belongs to Mario Lara, and this is far from the first strange recording from there. Before that, the owner noticed that in the mornings, piñatas were scattered across the floor, as if someone had made a mess during the night. He installed cameras and one day saw a strange head among the piñatas, resembling the face of a creature. Skeptics are convinced that all of it is staged, but supporters of the paranormal consider the shop one of the creepiest places on the internet. In January 2015, in Auckland, New Zealand, a group of students was filming material near Parnell railway station. At one point, they noticed a man and a woman who came out of the bushes on the other side of the tracks. Both were wearing white masks and simply stood there, looking at the students. At first, this could have been taken as a strange prank, but after a few minutes, the situation became far more alarming. When the students headed toward the parking lot, they realized that the pair was following them. In the end, they had to call the police. Armed officers arrived at the scene, and a police helicopter surveyed the area from above. Such a response would have looked excessive if not for one detail. The students were not the first to report the strange pair. Later, it turned out that these people were armed and connected to a mysterious Facebook group called Twins of Atticus, where cryptic posts were published. The pair's motives remained unclear, and the video itself became an example of how ordinary filming turns into a real nightmare. In March 2025, aboard the research vessel Falkor 2, scientists filmed something that had never been seen before: a young colossal squid swimming in its natural environment. The recording was made by the Sebastian vehicle near the South Sandwich Islands in the South Atlantic during a 35-day expedition. The creature was small, about 30 centimeters, but the significance of the footage is enormous. The colossal squid was first described 100 years ago, and throughout this entire century, scientists mostly knew it from remains, beaks in the stomachs of sperm whales, fragments caught in nets, and rare finds. To see a living animal in its own world is something entirely different. It is as if a legend stepped out of the shadows for a second and allowed itself to be filmed. We often imagine the ocean as explored, but footage like this proves the opposite. The most impressive creatures on Earth still know how to hide. On December 12th in Hayward, California, workers on a quiet street damaged a gas line. The gas ignited, and moments later, a powerful explosion thundered through the entire block. A doorbell camera from one of the houses captured the flash and the shockwave. Residents at first did not understand what was happening. Houses shook, objects fell from walls, and the street turned into a disaster zone in a second. Homeowner Brittany Malandano later said that the recording looked like footage from war. As a result of the explosion, 6 people were injured, 3 of them seriously. 2 houses and a workshop were damaged, and more than 75 firefighters arrived at the scene. This video is different from the mystical fragments. Here, everything is explained, but the explanation does not make the footage any less frightening. Sometimes what looks impossible happens not because of ghosts, but because of one damaged pipe under the ground. In footage supposedly filmed in Cuba, a bright orange object appears in the sky. At first, it looks like a glowing sphere suspended high above the ground, but then the object begins to rotate, and its shape seems to change right before your eyes. At one point, viewers feel as if they are no longer looking at a sphere, but at something resembling an aircraft with a glowing core continuing to rotate inside. This is exactly what makes the recording so strange. An ordinary balloon, drone, or sky lantern usually does not change shape so sharply and does not look so mechanical. Of course, the video may be edited, a camera effect, or the result of optical distortion, but if the footage is real, then we are looking at one of the most unusual UFO sightings in this collection. Chris Hill is known for filming abandoned places with an infrared camera. Such technology sometimes shows what the ordinary eye does not notice. During one investigation, he heard a loud bang that frightened him on the spot, but the most interesting thing was discovered later while reviewing the recording. On the thermal camera, a strange misty shape appeared in the room, drifting through the space. Chris did not see it with his eyes, but according to him, he felt something unpleasant. Then, in another fragment, near an archway in the neighboring room, a shape is again visible moving along the side of the frame. Skeptics can talk about dust, vapor, a camera defect, or a thermal trace, but the infrared image makes such phenomena especially strange. We are used to ordinary cameras making mistakes, but when a camera that sees heat makes a mistake, the mystery becomes deeper. The Yes Theory team explored Pennhurst State School and Hospital, one of the most famous abandoned institutions in the United States. It opened in 1908 and later gained a grim reputation because of stories of cruelty, suffering, and paranormal activity. During filming, the team used REM devices that react to changes in the magnetic field. Almost immediately, the devices began going off, especially near a closed door. In the basement, the explorers found dozens of dolls with red eyes sitting in the dark. Of course, the devices by themselves do not prove the presence of spirits, and the dolls could have been placed there deliberately, but the combination of the place, its history, the sounds, the darkness, and those faces creates almost unbearable tension. Pennhurst frightens not with one specific frame, but with the feeling that the building has absorbed too much human pain. In a hospital laundry room, a security guard noticed on the cameras that the washing machines were behaving strangely. He called employees so they could watch the recording together. In the sped-up video, one of the machines slowly but clearly changes position. This is not a slight vibration during spinning and not a small shift. The heavy equipment seems to move across the floor by itself. The staff's reaction looks especially convincing. They do not scream theatrically but laugh from confusion, like people who cannot believe their own eyes. Skeptics will say that the machine could have moved because of vibration, an uneven floor, or improper installation. But even with that explanation, the footage remains unpleasant. Number 9. In 2014, in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, a parent was filming a children's baseball game. During the game, no one noticed anything unusual, but later, while reviewing the video, the author saw a strange figure in the field. It looked like a dark silhouette in a cloak or cape and seemed to shimmer as if electrical discharges were passing through it. The strangest thing is that, according to eyewitnesses, no one saw this figure with their eyes during the game. It appeared only on the recording. Users proposed the boldest theories, from a camera glitch to an interdimensional creature or an alien partially hidden from sight. Rationally, it could be an artifact, a person in the background, a reflection, or a video error. But when a strange shape appears in a family video from a children's game, the effect is especially strong. Mysticism seems to invade the most ordinary day. Reddit user Navy_Beans shared a recording from a camera near a house in the mountains. All the surrounding properties were large, more than 3 acres, and the nearest town was far away. At night, the silhouette of a man emerges from the darkness on a gravel road. Then it becomes clear that he is completely without clothing. The stranger approaches the property, wanders around, at one point tries to open a door that fortunately was locked, and then walks back into the darkness. At first glance, this may sound almost comical, but for the homeowners, the situation was surely frightening. At night, far from town, a person in a strange state appears near your house and checks the door. This is not a ghost, not a monster, but a real threat with unclear motives. Not all frightening recordings are connected with ghosts. Sometimes reality turns out to be far more dangerous than any mysticism. At the end of 2025 in Minnesota, a family was at home when a man in a delivery vest with a branded box approached the door. The doorbell camera recorded him calmly checking a tablet or sheet of paper, pressing the bell, and acting as if he were completing an ordinary order. But when the homeowner opened the door, the man did not hand over a package. He dropped the box, which turned out to be empty, and pulled out a weapon. At that moment, 2 more masked men ran out from the side of the house. The most frightening part of the video is the preparation. The camera managed to capture the face of the suspect, who, seconds before the attack, looked directly into the lens. Police later used the recording to track the vehicle, but for the family, who were held inside their own home, this is no longer just a video. It is the moment after which the feeling of safety disappears forever. A woman and her relatives arrived at a country house in a remote place when something strange began happening in the living room. She took out her phone and started filming. There were no open windows in the room, the air conditioner was not running, but an old wooden rocking chair suddenly began to move. It was not merely rocking slightly, the chair rocked with such force as if someone invisible were sitting in it and pushing it harder and harder. Relatives, including a child, hid behind the doorway and watched what was happening. The video quickly gained more than 1 million views. Skeptics suggested that the chair could have been pulled with fishing line from outside the window, and that is a possible explanation. Not all incredible finds are connected with mysticism. Sometimes an entire forgotten world is hidden beneath an ordinary city street. In Glasgow, explorer Mitchell Kelly discovered tunnels and rooms under Argyle Street, one of the city's busiest shopping streets. He found the entrance almost by accident. A small opening led him underground. Inside were long, dark corridors, sealed-off sections, and rooms that no one had touched for decades. Rusty keys, oil cans, gloves, and forgotten tools lay on the floor. It is believed that the tunnels are connected to an old railway line and a district demolished back in the 19th century. This is not horror in the direct sense, but the feeling is powerful. Thousands of people pass over these places every day without even suspecting that another city has survived beneath their feet. Reddit user defend_aloha told a story connected with a girl named Kimberly. One night between 1 and 2, she returned home and heard a strange noise. She checked the first floor, found nothing, and went upstairs. At that moment, the alarm system went off. The system reported an intrusion. Kimberly's father checked the house but found no one. The only strange thing was that the door from the garage to the outside was open. Then the security system sent another notification from the living room camera. In the thumbnail of the video, an unknown figure was visible standing directly in the center of the room, but when the family opened the actual clip and viewed it frame by frame, the room was empty. The figure existed only in the thumbnail. It was not Kimberly and not her father. A technical error? Possibly, but an error that looks like a person in the living room at night still makes you freeze. Rusty Johnson from Fayetteville, North Carolina, once returned home and noticed that items in the kitchen were not in their places. It could have been accidental, but he decided to check the footage from a camera installed in the apartment. In the video, kitchen items seem to shift and fall from surfaces by themselves. Papers fly to the floor, dishes move without any visible reason, and there is no one in the room. Rusty said that while watching the recording, he felt as if someone was watching him. Moreover, he was suddenly overcome by a sharp, inexplicable wave of anger that lasted for about half an hour. Before that, he had lived in the apartment for almost a year, but according to him, the strange events began only a couple of months before the recording. Urban explorer Yusuf Ahmadi and his friends decided to check an abandoned school that was rumored to be a place with paranormal activity. Inside, they found the typical atmosphere of an abandoned building: broken windows, peeling paint, old chairs, and trash. But then they discovered something far more alarming: bullets. There were many of them, of different types, scattered throughout the building. At night, when the tension was already high, a dark figure quickly passed through the corridor in front of them. The explorers froze. Instead of leaving, they decided to continue for the sake of the footage. Yusuf shouted, asking whether it was another explorer. The answer was a frightening phrase from the darkness, after which it became clear they might not be alone in the building, and it is unknown what is more dangerous, a ghost or a real person hiding in an abandoned school with ammunition. Reddit user Gabberflasm published footage from his mother's security camera. In the frame, his brother is near the house, and in the distance between the trees, a humanoid figure appears. It walks through the area behind the property, then crouches, and seems to disappear. According to the author, his brother did not see or hear anyone at that moment. Neighbors should not have been walking there, and the place does not look like a path for random passers-by. Perhaps it was a person who simply disappeared behind terrain or bushes, but on the recording, the disappearance looks too sudden. Many pet owners know this feeling. A pet suddenly freezes and stares into an empty corner, as if seeing something there that a person does not see. User VideoChica89 said that at night she heard strange sounds from the direction of the stairs and decided to install a camera. In the morning, she watched the recording and saw that her dog had been sitting at the top of the stairs, motionlessly staring downward for more than 4 hours. The dog did not sleep, run around, or get distracted. It was as if it was watching something below. After that night, according to the owner, the dog began refusing to use the stairs. The rational explanation may be simple. The animal heard a sound in the walls, sensed a smell, or reacted to movement invisible to a human. In 2019, the Ocean X team filmed a giant blunt-nosed six-gill shark rising from the sand at great depth. Humans rarely see this species. It is older than the dinosaurs and on average can be larger than a great white shark. Usually such sharks reach 4.5 to 5 meters, and some grow even larger. Scientists made an important step. For the first time, they tagged a six-gill shark in its natural environment using an underwater vehicle. Earlier, animals had to be brought to the surface for that, which is dangerous both for researchers and for the shark itself. In the footage, it looks like a creature from another era, massive, slow, almost prehistoric. It is not a monster, but a real animal that has survived millions of years of evolution. In Colombia, a camera filmed a strange moment near the entrance to a house where, judging by the sounds, a party or gathering may have been taking place inside. A man walks inside, the door remains open for some time and then begins to close, and then an object flies toward it at high speed. It looks like a ball, but it does not move in a straight line. The trajectory seems to bend, the object sharply changes direction and crashes into the door or near it. According to the source, the man suffered an injury that required stitches. What it was is unclear. A ball? A stone? A bird? An object thrown by someone outside? Or a strange object that appeared in the frame without an obvious reason? The video works precisely because of its speed. Everything happens so quickly that the brain cannot identify the shape. All that remains is to slow down the footage and try to understand what rushed toward the door. At 1:32 in the morning, the owner of a recently purchased house received a motion camera notification. He was not asleep yet and immediately opened the recording. The camera, pointed at the hallway, showed a blurred figure passing through the frame. The outlines were unclear, but it looked like a person or something humanoid. The strangest thing, the owner heard no footsteps, no door, and no other sounds. He lived alone and had moved in only a week earlier. Moreover, for 9 days he had felt a foreign presence in the house, as if something was not right. After the video was posted online, opinions split. Some spoke of a ghost, while others suggested a far more earthly and dangerous version. An intruder could have been hiding in the house. Right after midnight on January 1st, 2026, a Ring camera in Bermuda captured 3 people at the front door of a house. They approached under cover of darkness, checked the handle, and tried to open the door by force or with tools. One stood watch while the others tried to get inside. The figures were wearing hoods or masks and remained on the porch for several minutes, shaking the handle and pressing against the door frame. Fortunately, the reinforced door held. After several failed attempts, the suspects left. The owners probably received a notification or heard the noise and stayed safe inside. Police studied the recording as part of an investigation into similar incidents. This is one of those fragments that reminds you, a camera does not always prevent danger, but it gives time. Sometimes a few centimeters of metal and wood between you and someone else's intention are enough for everything to end differently. On August 30th, 2023, the NOAA Okeanos Explorer vessel was studying a seamount in the Gulf of Alaska when a remotely operated vehicle noticed a strange object. The broadcast operator called it a yellow hat. Scientists began proposing versions: coral, sponge, egg capsule, or something else. When the vehicle came closer, an opening or tear became visible on one side. One scientist noted that it looked as if something had tried to get out or get inside. Another compared the scene to the beginning of an episode of The X-Files. The object was brought aboard using a suction sampler. Expedition coordinator Sam Candio confirmed that it was biological in origin, but then the mystery began. The object did not resemble a known sponge, coral, or egg casing. Perhaps it is a new species, an unknown developmental stage of a familiar organism, or something entirely different. In Evansville, Indiana, a man and his wife ordered food through DoorDash. After dinner, both became ill. They felt burning in their mouths, throats, noses, and stomachs. Fortunately, they had a door camera. The recording shows the delivery woman placing the food on the porch, then taking a small aerosol canister from a keychain and spraying something directly onto the bag. Later, the woman was identified as 29-year-old Courtney Stevenson. During questioning, she claimed that she had used pepper spray supposedly while trying to kill a spider. Investigators did not believe the explanation, including because it was about 35 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and spiders are usually inactive in such conditions. She was charged with causing harm and tampering with a consumer product. Footage from China's Hunan province shows an enormous number of insects filling the space around people. There are so many of them that an ordinary street begins to look like a scene from an apocalyptic film. The air seems to move, and any movement through such a mass appears impossible. Such invasions may be connected with seasonal cycles, light, weather, insect reproduction, or environmental changes. But for an eyewitness, it still looks like a catastrophe. A person may understand that they are facing a natural phenomenon, but when millions of small creatures fill the space around them, the mind reacts with primal fear. In 1999, in the town of Elephant Butte, New Mexico, a woman named Cynthia Vigil managed to escape from a trailer where she had been held. This led police to the home of David Parker Ray. What they found in his trailer, which he called the Toy Box, became one of the darkest cases in American criminal history. Among the seized materials was a recording intended for victims. Ray's voice on it sounded frighteningly calm. He explained the rules as if conducting an instruction. Investigators who heard the full recording called it one of the coldest and cruelest things they had ever encountered. Ray died shortly after sentencing and never revealed the full scale of his crimes. On March 27th in Deptford, southeast London, a woman of about 40 was returning home at approximately 7:15 in the evening. The camera showed her going down the steps toward the front door, holding a bag and a backpack and looking for her keys. At that moment, a man in black clothing with his face covered appeared behind her. He came right up to her, grabbed the woman, and threatened her with a knife. Police were called about 10 minutes after the incident. Fortunately, the woman was not injured, but according to the latest information from the original subtitles, there had been no arrests at that moment. One of the most famous recordings in UFO circles is the alleged interview with an alien, supposedly filmed at the S4 facility near Area 51. According to the legend, the video was handed over by an informant under the name Victor. He claimed that he copied the recording from secret materials. Later, the fragment appeared in the 1997 documentary Area 51, The Alien Interview, where names such as Bob Lazar also appeared. Victor's voice was altered, and he himself avoided directly admitting that he had worked at the facility, but insisted that he had a reason to be there. The recording shows a creature sitting in a dark room during an interrogation. The reality of the video has been disputed for decades. Some consider it a crude staging, while others see it as the most important leak about extraterrestrial life. The story of Agamemnon Counterpart is connected with a damaged VHS tape supposedly found around 1995 at an abandoned gas station in Haworth, Oklahoma. This strange title was written on the label. The recording begins like an ordinary commercial tape with a warning, but then turns into something resembling an old children's program. Bright colors, looping music, a cartoon character with huge gloves instead of legs, strange inscriptions, and a sudden piercing scream. The video is difficult to describe because it works not through plot but through sensory pressure. Sharp sounds, unstable images, repeating shapes. There is an online legend that the scream was taken from another creepy Japanese recording, but there is no proof of this. Perhaps it is experimental horror or an art project. In August 2022, scientists lowered a camera into the Izu Ogasawara Trench off the coast of Japan. They were participating in a multi-year study by the University of Western Australia and the University of Tokyo, trying to determine the depth limit at which fish can live. At a depth of 8,336 meters, the camera filmed a small, ghostly snailfish, a young individual swimming in complete darkness. The pressure there is approximately 800 times higher than at the sea surface. For a long time, it was believed that fish could not live below roughly 8,200 meters because their proteins would stop functioning normally. But this tiny fish turned out to be even deeper. A few days later, researchers caught two snailfish at a depth of 8,022 meters in the neighboring Japan Trench. These became the deepest fish physically caught by humans. This fragment is not frightening, but it is incredible. Life found a way where almost everything should destroy it. Workers at Wellington Indoor Market in Telford, England, arrived in the morning and saw that boxes were scattered across the floor and stairs. At first, everyone thought there had been a break-in, but the surveillance camera showed not a person but a strange scene, boxes falling and rolling down the steps by themselves. If you watch the recording carefully, before the fall you can notice a dark shape moving up the stairs. It is very faint, but it looks like a shadow. The market building has existed since the 13th century and has long had a reputation as a place with odd occurrences. In May 2024, researchers from the University of Western Australia and Kelpie Geosciences were lowering a baited camera in the Samoan Passage north of Samoa. While the camera was descending, it was suddenly attacked by the extremely rare Dana octopus squid. It is one of the most elusive deep-sea animals. It was about 75 centimeters long and mistook the camera for prey. The most incredible feature of this squid is the huge glowing organs at the ends of two arms. They are called photophores and can be roughly the size of a lemon. These are the largest photophores among animals. Each has a dark lid, similar to an eyelid, with which the squid controls the light. It is believed that such flashes help blind prey and communicate. These creatures are filmed alive on camera extremely rarely. Most knowledge about them previously came from carcasses washed ashore, accidental catches, or the stomach contents of whales. That is why this footage is a real window into another world. In September 2024, scientists lowered a baited camera into the Tonga Trench, one of the deepest in the world. At a depth of about 3,300 meters, they filmed a creature that has been seen fewer than 20 times in history, a big fin squid. It looks as if it came not from the ocean, but from another planet. Its tentacles can reach 4 meters and bend at right angles, almost like elbows. In the recording, the squid slowly walks along the seafloor on thin limbs, then stops and pulses its fins. These squids are among the deepest living known to science. Most observations are accidental. They were filmed by cameras from oil and gas companies or research vehicles. Scientists still do not know exactly why they have such tentacles or how exactly they catch prey. One version says that the limbs work like a web, catching small animals in the darkness. This creature is a ready-made image of alien life, only it lives on our planet. The Heaven's Gate cult left behind some of the most disturbing video recordings in the history of religious sects. Before the tragic events of 1997, group leader Marshall Applewhite recorded interviews with the members. They calmly spoke about what they were going to do, shared excitement, joy, and confidence that they were leaving their physical bodies to transition to a higher level in space. The most frightening thing in these recordings is not screaming and not chaos, but calmness. People speak as if they are finishing school or starting a new job. They look convinced, almost happy. Soon after these interviews, their bodies were found. These videos became the final statements of people completely detached from reality and led by a dangerous idea. TikTok user Booby Doom was having dinner with her husband when the camera at home sent a notification. In the recording, a woman stood on the lawn and looked at the house. That alone would have been strange, but at that moment, lightning was constantly lighting up the sky. The weather was clearly not suitable for a walk. The homeowners called the nanny, who was at home with the child, and asked her to go to the master bedroom, lock herself in the bathroom, and not panic. Then the stranger approached the door. In her hands, she held something wrapped in a blanket. Fortunately, it turned out to be a doll, not a child. But that is exactly what makes the situation even stranger. Perhaps the woman used the doll to evoke pity and make people open the door. Who she was and what she wanted is unknown. The camera filmed not a crime, not a ghost, but an alarming attempt to approach the house at the worst possible moment. Reddit user KitKat9876 had long been waking up at night with the feeling that someone was shaking her bed. At first she could write it off as sleep, nerves, or body movement, but when the strange awakenings kept repeating again and again, she installed a camera in the bedroom. What she filmed caused a great deal of debate among viewers. The recording shows a vertical form seemingly rising under the sheet. It does not look like the leg or arm of the sleeping woman. A moment later, the sheet falls back down and then something resembling a head appears from underneath it. In Carrollton, north of Dallas, at about 8 in the evening, a person wearing a devil mask approached a couple's house. The owners were not home. They had gone out to dinner and bought a lottery ticket. The doorbell camera filmed the stranger holding a cardboard sign with a reference to Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 15. This passage of the Bible is connected with the theme of the Last Judgment and the lake of fire. The person rang the bell, waited, knocked, then walked around the house and showed the sign at the back. Police later called the incident isolated and did not seriously investigate it because formally no crime had occurred. Perhaps it was a prank, but for the homeowner, who was sincerely frightened by the theme of the end times, the video became a real shock. The video titled Satan's Bridge was uploaded to YouTube in 2008, but the footage itself was filmed by Chris Childrey back in 1999 and 2000. He explored the area under a bridge on the state border in Cascade, Virginia. Locals called the place Satan's Bridge. Under the bridge, Chris found a ditch with animal remains, deer, dogs, and other carcasses. A heavy smell of death hung in the air. At first, he thought it might be a place where animals hit by cars were dumped, but then, in daylight footage from 1999, he discovered traces of black candles and stones laid out in a crude pentagram shape. This does not prove rituals, but it looks disturbing enough to be remembered. Most videos with glowing orbs are easy to explain as dust, insects, or glare, but the recording published by Reddit user trash_scientist looked different. The security camera was triggered by motion, and the owner expected to see an animal or random light. Instead, a bright object appeared in the frame moving between the trees. At first, it was taken for a paper lantern, but the trajectory was too strange. The orb rose, descended, moved aside, and changed direction again, as if intentionally controlled. The glow was so strong that it illuminated the trees around it. At the same time, the camera did not record the sound of a drone, and afterward no lantern, trash, or human traces were found in the garden. The neighboring property was lower, so the version with a lantern in a person's hand also seemed doubtful. In 2019, a video with the mysterious title 1444 appeared online. It showed a young man named Gleb Gorobets sitting on a couch and speaking to the camera in Russian. Then a tragedy happens that should not be described in detail. The recording quickly became infamous because for a long time people did not know who was shown in the video or where it came from. A legend grew around the clip. Supposedly the recording was cursed and the viewer had to leave the date of viewing in the comments, otherwise they would face a similar fate. Of course, there is no real curse, but the clip itself became one of the most famous and traumatic fragments of found video on the internet. Here it is important to say directly, such recordings should not be searched for or watched. Some footage does not reveal a mystery and does not provide knowledge. It simply stays in memory as something it would have been better never to see. Number 1. One homeowner said that for more than 10 years he has observed something strange at a small playground behind the house. The playground is clearly visible from the kitchen window, especially the swings. From time to time, one of them begins moving by itself, not slightly swaying in the wind, but swinging evenly and confidently, sometimes for 5 minutes or longer. There were cases when the person looked an hour later and the swing was still moving at almost the same speed. On windy days, everything looked normal. Both swings moved slightly together, but in calm weather with no noticeable wind, only one moved. The park is well kept, often used by children, and located near children's institutions. That is exactly why the empty swing looks so unpleasant. In China, passers-by noticed a cat standing in the middle of the street completely motionless. It did not move its paws, did not turn its head, and looked as if it had been replaced by a stuffed toy. People began stopping and filming what was happening on their phones. But then a second cat entered the frame and froze in exactly the same way. Usually, cats can freeze when they are stalking prey or hearing an unclear sound, but witnesses claimed there were no birds, insects, or other obvious stimuli nearby. Two living cats stood like statues, as if they had simultaneously frozen. Online viewers joked about a glitch in the Matrix, but there is a reason for that joke. When animals behave outside the usual rules, people immediately feel uneasy. Perhaps the cats were simply reacting to something humans could not see or hear, and that explanation is no less frightening than the mystical version. In 2023, a video spread across TikTok showing a woman standing on the sidewalk in an extremely strange pose. She is not walking and not standing naturally. Her body seems to have frozen in the middle of a step. Cars move around her, people pass by, but the woman remains motionless. The strangest detail is that her hair also does not move, although there is airflow and city movement around her. After a few seconds, she suddenly continues walking as if nothing happened. The author of the video claimed that the woman had been standing like that for about a minute, even before the recording began. The video quickly gained millions of views, and the comments filled with jokes about an NPC from a video game. Rationally, one can assume that the woman simply froze very well, or that the frame is distorted by the camera. But the problem is that everything looks too perfect: the pose, the surroundings, the sudden continuation of movement. The Paris catacombs already look like a place where it is easy to lose your sense of time. Kilometers of tunnels stretch beneath the city, and not all of them are intended for tourists. One of the most famous legends is connected with a video camera supposedly found deep in the catacombs. In the recording, a person walks through narrow corridors, at first confidently as if knowing the route, but then it becomes clear that he is lost. His breathing quickens, the camera begins to shake, and his steps speed up. In the finale, the recording falls to the ground and continues filming an empty tunnel while the person runs away into the darkness. According to the legend, he was never found. Some consider the story staged, others see it as one of the creepiest found videos. In August 2022, YouTuber Matthew Moons explored an old abandoned church in Milwaukee. He expected to film ordinary shots of urban decay, peeling paint, broken windows, empty rooms. But on the upper floors, in a small room, he found human remains. The body lay in a corner and was already badly decomposed. Moons immediately called the police and did not publish the recording. Later, investigators identified the deceased. It was 32-year-old Michael Christopher Day, a local resident who had been listed as missing. Some identifying features remained on the body, including jewelry and tattoos, but the cause of death was not obvious. In November, at about 1 o'clock in the morning, a Ring camera in Wisconsin filmed a group of 6 teenagers in hoodies. They approached a parked car on a quiet residential street, stood nearby, and waited until the area was empty. Then one of them threw a large stone, breaking the car window. A few seconds later, he set an object on fire and threw it onto the passenger seat. The fire began to spread and the group suddenly panicked. One ran away immediately, while the others awkwardly began throwing various objects into the car, as if trying to fix what they had just done. Then the vehicle erupted into a huge fireball. The alarm went off, and the street was lit by flames. A neighbor ran out and began ringing the doorbell, trying to wake the owners. It is unknown whether this was targeted arson or random cruelty, but the recording shows how stupidity turns within seconds into a fire that could have destroyed far more than one car. The YouTube channel Alan Tutorial began as a parody of tutorial videos. The author showed meaningless instructions, how to turn a letter into a square, how to fill a small container with soil, and other absurd actions. At first, it looked like surreal humor filmed from a first-person view, but the further the channel developed, the more disturbing the videos became. Locations looked increasingly dirty and destroyed, titles turned into sets of random words, and Alan himself spoke more and more chaotically. The final video was filmed in a dark room filled with trash. The author repeated the word tutorial, and the camera jerked so violently that the viewer felt uncomfortable. In the frame, strange pieces resembling raw meat flashed for a moment. Most likely it was an artistic project, but it is made so convincingly that it creates the feeling of a person truly falling apart before the viewer's eyes. In 2024, YouTuber and diver Barney Dillerstone lowered a baited camera to about 200 meters in the sea off Bali, near the coast of Indonesia. He filmed at night to see what creatures emerge in deep waters after dark. Over 2 nights, the camera captured eels, nautiluses, moray eels, crabs, and other marine life. But on the second night, a creature swam in front of the lens that the diver could not identify. It resembled a small rounded ray, a stingaree usually found off the eastern coast of Australia. The problem was that such rays were not supposed to be in Indonesia. Barney sent the recording to marine biologists, and even specialists could not immediately say what species it was. Perhaps it is a rare variety long thought extinct, or an unknown form about which science knows almost nothing. The depth reminded us once again, the maps of the ocean are still incomplete. At 2:39 in the morning, a camera in the backyard of a house captured a strange figure emerging from the forest. The camera was installed at a height of about 3 meters and pointed toward a huge area of protected forest covering more than 10,000 acres. There were no streetlights, cabins, trails, or roads around. In the recording, a tall figure slowly appears from the darkness and moves toward the street. According to the author's estimate, considering the height of the camera and the shooting angle, the creature's height could exceed 9 feet. Even more disturbing was the way it moved, very slowly, evenly, almost unnaturally. After the figure appeared, the camera recorded low, strange sounds from the forest that continued for about 30 seconds. It could have been a person, an animal, a perspective distortion, or something else. But if you live next to such a forest, a recording like this at 3 in the morning will make you check every lock. In Chile, a woman named Cecilia Carrasco came to a lawyer's office for a meeting. The surveillance camera shows her walking through the room, then stopping for a second, and suddenly falling backward. It does not look like an ordinary slip or loss of balance. She does not trip, does not make a sharp movement, but seems to receive a strong push in the chest. Cecilia herself later said that she felt exactly physical contact, as if someone had suddenly shoved her, but when she looked around, there was no one nearby. The fall turned out to be serious and she needed medical help. Before the incident, the woman did not believe in the paranormal, but afterwards she changed her opinion. In September 2017, not far from Las Vegas, a surveillance camera recorded two men climbing over the back wall of a house. They approached an unlocked back door, quietly opened it, and entered. Inside the house, the owners were asleep at that time, only a few meters away from the intruders. The recording shows the men creeping through the kitchen, trying not to make noise, searching for valuables and taking items, including a bag. They clearly understood that there were people in the house, but still continued. Then they left the same way they had entered. The owners discovered the theft later and handed the recording over to police. As far as is known from the original material, the intruders were never found. This video is frightening not because of paranormality, but because of silence. People are sleeping on the sofa while strangers walk through their home nearby. When you watch all of these clips one after another, it is easy to say, half are staged, some are camera errors, some are coincidences, and some are ordinary people, animals, and natural phenomena in unusual circumstances. And perhaps there is truth in that. But the power of such videos is not only in whether they are proven or not. Their power is in the feeling of a boundary. Cameras today are everywhere, at doors, in bedrooms, on farms, in hospitals, in abandoned buildings, on underwater vehicles, and in airplanes. And the more we film the world, the more often we notice things in it that earlier would simply have passed us by. Every frame may have an explanation, but not every explanation is able to remove the feeling of unease. And that is exactly why such recordings continue to shock the internet. They remind us, reality did not become more understandable only because we now have cameras. Sometimes a camera does not give an answer. It simply captures a moment after which there are even more questions. Write in the comments everything you think about this and subscribe to the Top Facts channel for collections of the most incredible facts and videos from all over the internet. And right now you can write the keyword rocket in the comments. That way I will know that you watched until the very end. Thank you for watching, and right now watch our previous episodes which have already appeared on your screen.